host for the first hour, and today is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who chooses to join us here today. Whether you're listening live or through the archives, we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole boatload of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we would appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. And or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a comment or a question from you through the email, we'll address it on the internet show. And then as time allows, we'll send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archive for your feedback or input. There's also a way for you to ask a question through the app. On any page, click on the link, send an email directly to Jeannie. They'll address the question on the next internet show, and then send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can get an answer if you have a question about the processing of the worksheet process through the app. And the other way to contact us directly is if you're listening to the radio, you can't contact us. So if you want to have a question or a comment or talk to us live, you need to download the Needle app from your App Store, NEDL, AI for live radio, or Radio Tuner. And when you download that app and log in, give them your information, answer a few questions, then you'll have the capability to type in a comment or press the phone icon and give us a call. Actually speak to us voice to voice. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that, whether it's through an email or a typed in comment or a call, a live call in, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just much, much easier to do when we hear from you. How can we support you? What's on your mind? How is it landing for you when we're reading various books? So we have plenty of time for comments and questions today, and as I have talked about in the past, the readings we're doing about whether it's Christian Sundberg's book, A Walk in the Physical, or reading A Course in Miracles, or reading The Way of Mastery with commentary, they're all just ways for us to look at the same fundamental dynamics of how we experience life, how we create our experience of life, how we literally create every emotion that we experience. And as I like to say, from one of the first lectures that I was privileged to hear with Dr. Michael Rice, he talked about how if you're going to learn something new and something profound, the more different ways you can hear it from the more different perspectives, the faster you'll learn it and the deeper your understanding will be. And the wisdom behind that observation is why I bring in all the different readings, all the different versions of these methods and techniques from different teachers, because they're all, to my eye and ear anyway, teaching the same thing. And that same thing is this choice to begin to learn to question everything and move into, as much as possible, closer and closer to 100% responsibility for every emotional experience we generate, and with the awareness of the tools, whether they're Dr. Michael Rice's tools or somebody else's, when we start to experience an emotional state that we don't prefer, now we have options for shifting, using the energy that we actually have control over in a specific, focused way to get results that we do prefer. And so, I've had several things going on this morning. One includes a session I just had with somebody where the idea of the interactions that we have with our parents are so deeply formative in our lives that while it's absolutely fine, lots of people do it, we can walk around and never pay any attention to the people that raised us and the kind of patterns that they modeled for us and what we might have downloaded or come to believe about our lives based on our interactions with our parents. And yet, whether we like to pay attention to it or not, those interactions craft our responses to life events today. One way to start getting access to that is Dr. Michael Rice's worksheet. Again, this is another free worksheet that's available on that webpage, whyagain.org, whyagain.org. When you click on the Start Here words, it takes you to a page where if you scroll down, you'll see a link for other worksheets. And one of the other worksheets is a thing called 3 Early Memories of Conflict. And I've probably worked with that over 20 times in the years, because in the early going of our Mindshifter support groups, all we did was watch Dr. Michael Rice videos. And that was one of the videos he had that worksheet process, 3 Early Memories of Conflict. And every time we would watch that video, we'd watch it 2 or 3 times a year because it was in rotation for the videos that that I owned at that time that Dr. Michael Rice had put out on DVD. And every time I would do it, I'd get a slightly different insight into the dynamics that were driving my life that I had downloaded from a much earlier time in my life. And when I became aware of these dynamics, after I got over the shock, then I was able to start applying Dr. Michael Rice's reality management worksheet and EFT tapping, and I could have friends who do the neuro-emotional technique help me with energy work to clear up that energy from a different angle, and I could start removing the beliefs I had downloaded that were fear-based, that were negative about myself and others, and always fear-based. And the more I removed them, the more flexible I found myself being in my day-to-day life situations where there was conflict arising. Prior to my becoming aware of these beliefs I'd downloaded from childhood and these interactions that are listed as, early memories of conflict, I just thought I was always right in my interactions with people, and I thought they were wrong, and that's why it didn't go well, and I thought I was justified in procrastinating or avoiding certain situations. And I can tell you firsthand that I am far more comfortable with my life and interactions these days than I was before I had applied the tool of the 3 early memories of conflict and really uncovered some of the powerful dynamics that were based in fear and based in previous trauma that were driving my interactions with people as an adult. So that's the purpose of our work, is to help you and anybody else who's willing to pick up the tools get more flexible, a wider range of responses, and again, I do that with the use of the worksheets. Also do that with the use of reading different spiritual teachers and philosophers and authors who have a similar set of observations. And we've read most of the book, A Walk in the Physical. And we've read it on the internet show and often with commentary. And I've had a couple people, Susan Bingham, one of them, asking me to reach out to Christian Sundberg and see if he would be willing to be a guest on either the Mind Shifters Radio or the On Your Mind podcast. And he has finally responded to a message I sent, and we're going to be working on getting something set up. He's not available until about August at the earliest, so we'll keep you posted on news with that. And if you're new to the show and you don't know about the book A Walk in the Physical, Christian Sundberg was about 30 years old, and he got turned on to the My Big Theory of Everything, My Big Toe. There's 3 books in this trilogy written by Mr. Campbell. And he was so lit up by Mr. Campbell's work that he contacted Mr. Campbell and said, please teach me. And Mr. Campbell said, no, I won't teach you. Just start doing your own meditation. Turn inward, ask, and the answers will be given. So Christian Sundberg, and this is my recollection from reading the book a couple times, that he did start to meditate, and as he started to meditate, he remembered that when he was the first 5-6 years of his life, he remembered why he had come here. He life negotiations, if you will. He remembered planning to come here to learn certain lessons. And this shocked him, and he was afraid to share it with anybody. He eventually shared it with his wife and then some friends, and then they encouraged him to share it with others. And so since then, he's been sharing it, and he's written the book, A Walk in the Physical. And he has his own website, awalkinthephysical.com, and he does interviews like the one we're hoping to get to arrange sometime in August or September. And the purpose of it is simply to help people change their perspective on their purpose and meaning in life, to create a meaning in life that is rewarding for the individual, not from some external authority figure that says this is the meaning in life and you have to adopt this meaning, etc. So I think about people like Christian Sundberg and people like Alan Cohen, and we've been reading from his book, Of Course in Miracles, as people that are a lot like Stephen Davis, that wrote Butterflies Are Free to Fly, that we recently read. I think of them as people just like us who have an adventurous side to them, and they want to explore. And they don't just go and explore mountaintops, they explore their inner world. And it's not that they are an authority figure, it's that they are a fellow traveler who maybe has been down some dead-end paths and can warn us not to go there, or at least warn us that if we want to go explore it, that there are some treacherous spots. So I think the same thing of Guy Finley and Dale Allen Hoffman and Dr. Michael Rice. And, if you listen on a regular basis to Dr. Michael Rice, eventually you'll hear him share something about his own process. And you'll hear him at least give a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that he has his own issues and that, sometimes he gets triggered and sometimes Jeannie gets triggered, etc. And it's important for me to not leave that in a tongue-in-cheek reference, but to state it explicitly. No one is further along on any kind of path. Everyone is on their own path. Everyone is essentially the same. They started in this physical realm as a sperm and an egg, and they're going to end as dust, despite what some people want to claim. And it is valuable to step into this relationship that we all have. Many of us don't even know it's there. This relationship we have to the source that gave rise to us, that can be for us this source of guidance and wisdom and kind of the like the cushioning agent that helps us be gentle with ourselves, that helps us develop compassion. And one of those things, Guy Finley says, when you wake up and realize that you can't stop yourself from doing, the very thing that you think you're angry at somebody else for doing, that's what opens the doorway to compassion. And that same wisdom is written into Dr. Michael Rice's reality management worksheet in the current 7-step version, the 6th step. Let's say that I have a worksheet that I'm doing that I'm so upset, and my mind is telling me I'm upset because I found out that somebody I'm in a relationship with lied to me. And I'm generating all of this emotion of anger and upset, and my goal is I just want them to tell me the truth. And I work through the worksheet, and I recognize that if I'm in pain or fear or sadness, it's my thoughts that are off the mark. I figure out the goal that I need. My mind is telling me has to happen in order for me to be happy. I cancel the thought and the goal, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my mind. And at the very least, my anger gets turned down in intensity. Sometimes it disappears altogether. Sometimes there'll be a deep insight from the past, sometimes not. And then the next step of the worksheet asks me to pay attention to the times where I have violated the goal that I had for the other person. So if I set up a goal in that worksheet where the person lied to me, I want them to always be honest, and I want them to accept responsibility for when they were dishonest. Then I have to ask myself, where in my life have I not been 100% honest, or I have not accepted responsibility for my dishonesty? And if I'm not willing to do that, then I can't really open the doorway to compassion. I can't really get a deeper level of understanding about my role in the world and my relationship to the world and the people in it. So, as I acknowledge, I'm trying to find a way to understand the difference between me and other people. For years I was doing that, and I studied in psychology and I got my doctorate, and that's all about looking at differences and looking at people that are diseased, modeled, they have psychopathologies, etc., and they've got traumas. And yet that took me down a lot of dead ends. And my work with people began to be much more productive when I was introduced to a model that was non-pathologizing, that looked at everyone as though they're doing everything they're doing for good reasons. And if I can help them discover the reasons they have at a conscious or unconscious level, they may have at an unconscious, emotionally viable level. If I can help them uncover those reasons, I'm much more effective at facilitating them in making the changes they need to make. But that's based on the recognition that we're all the same. And if we're all the same, then we have to look at, well, on different levels of scale. I mean, this person looks like they're 7 foot tall, and this person's only 5 foot tall, and this person is skinny as a rail, and this person's overweight, and this person's got lots of hair, and this person's got no hair. I can look at all of those external indicators and give them meaning and value, but they don't have any more meaning or value than I give to them. I can also take a step back and listen to the deep, deep spiritual traditions that say something like what I'm going to say. This is something I've distilled out of all this work I've done. The only significant difference between you and any person that's ever lived or ever will live is the degree to which you are able to live, or they're able to live, in the realization, in the felt sense, the deep truth that we're all the same. Now, I know on the surface it sounds like doublespeak. What's the only difference between us? The only difference is that we're all the same. What are you talking about? If the actuality of life is that we're all part of one consciousness and all part of one mind, and we're all in this physical body only because of the happenstance of a sperm and an egg getting together and the energetic patterns giving rise to this growing body of energy that we call a physical body. And we're all in that together. And we all go through forgetting our spiritual truths and at different levels struggling to make it in the physical realm, at different levels learning about perhaps an existence of an energetic or a spiritual realm. We're all doing the same thing. I think one of the first places I heard it was from Ram Dass, the phrase, we're all just walking each other home. We're all just sparks of the one mind. We're all just these bits of the one light. And yet if I'm separate and or separated from anyone or anything, then I create a different experience of myself and these others that I say are. But the deeper I can reach into my own experience, the deeper I can ask to be shown what are these negative and therefore false beliefs I hold or perceptions that I'm holding on to that make it seem like I'm different than somebody else? And the more I see past the false beliefs and the distorted perceptions, the more I see what, in the way of mastery in the third lesson, they describe as the shimmering radiance of this energy that underlies all of my labels, all of my physical perceptions. The more I see past that, the more I realize we're all the same. And so I'm either living in the dream of separation, or I'm living with the full-on realization that we're all the same. And that's the only difference between you and anybody that's ever lived or ever will live. And a lot of these deep spiritual teachings say we're all headed to the same place. We're all headed home. We're all headed to this full awakening to the realization that we're all just part of one mind. We're all just part of this one creative flow. So, I'll take a breath, if anybody has any comments or questions. If anybody wants to make a, Don says the sound is excellent today. Thank you, Don. Glad to hear it. Please feel free to press the phone icon and on the app and speak directly to us, voice to voice. And in lieu of that, I'll continue and I'll move back to the reading with Alan Cohen's book, Of Course in Miracles, where we stopped the last time was in the 15th lesson. And Alan writes that the title of this lesson is Clouds Cannot Stop You. And he writes, when Christopher Columbus's 3 ships approached the island of Guanahani in the Caribbean, the natives standing on the beach didn't see the ships. They had never seen clipper ships before. The idea of such a vessel did not live in their mind or their reality. So those forms were invisible to the natives. We see only what we believe in. It's possible to miss something right in front of you because you don't believe it's there, or to miss it because your attention is elsewhere. If you listened to Dr. Michael Rice's show yesterday, he went back to the fundamental teaching about how he's never said a word. He's only expelled air out over his vocal cords that has caused a vibration. And if that vibration hits the stirrup and the anvil and the eardrum and the hairs in the ear of a human being who has a meaning in their mind for those vibrations, then that person believes they know what Michael Rice had intended to say. Words don't have any meaning other than the meaning that you give them. And he says here, we only see what we believe in. Right? And so the idea that there could be something as large as a 3 or 5 masted schooner never occurred to these natives because they'd never seen anything like it. And so the idea is from this kind of a story, whether it's actually true that it happened this way or not, we have examples of this in our lives. I remember a number of years ago, there was a story that came out on some news website that I was reading. And as I read it, I thought I read other celebrities in prison with O.J. Simpson. And I was curious, and so I clicked on the story and started reading, and the story that I read on a different page had nothing to do with O.J. Simpson in prison and other celebrities. So I clicked back to the original page and reread it. And again, I thought, here's a headline that says, surprise other celebrities in prison with O.J. Simpson. I clicked back to read the article, had nothing to do with it. It wasn't until the third or fourth time that I clicked back to the original page that I realized there was a picture of O.J. Simpson. There was a word from another article altogether about prison, and my mind made up the rest. Now, to this day, I can't tell you what the actual article is about, but I vividly remember clicking back to the article and trying to read it for who was in prison with O.J. Simpson, clicking back to the headline and trying to figure out, yep, I'm reading it right, and clicking back. We all do this all the time. We don't always get such stark examples of how we're making things up, how we are giving, as the Course in Miracles says, I have given this situation all the meaning it has for me. I have given this word, this situation, this occurrence in my life, all the meaning it has for me. And if that's true, as these great teachings tell us, it's true for everything in my life experience. So Alan Cohen goes on here and he says, in my seminars, I show a video of two small teams of college students, one wearing white t-shirts and the other black t-shirts. Both teams are standing in a circle, passing a basketball to members of their own team. So imagine that there are 50, let's make it an even number. So there are 10 people standing in a circle. 5 of them have white shirts and 5 of them have red shirts. And they're passing basketball back and forth to members of their own team. They might even be, one has one color basketball and the other has a different color basketball. He says, I ask the viewers to count the number of passes that the team with the white shirts makes during a 30-second period, and I offer them a prize if they state the correct number. Afterward, I ask the audience if they have any comments on the video. 1 or 2 viewers ask, what's up with the gorilla that walked through the group? And then I reply playfully, what gorilla? And then they say, well, someone in a gorilla costume walked into the midst of the basketball players, faced the camera, pounded his chest, and then walked out of the room. And then I say, that's really weird. Let's have another look at the video. And then when you replay the video, sure enough, that's exactly what happens. But the vast majority of people, 2/3 of the audience, had no idea that a person in a gorilla suit walked into the middle of the circle, pounded its chest, and then walked out of the group. And people were incredulous. They thought, well, that's not the same video. This is a trick. This is a different video. The first one was edited differently or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it's the same video. And it's an example of what they call the reticular activating system. It is the part of our mind that chooses what we focus on. And so you can watch this on YouTube for yourself under the title Selective Attention Test from Simon and Chabris, Chabris, from 1999. Now, you might experience the same phenomenon at home in the form of fridge blindness. You open the door of the refrigerator looking for a jar of mayonnaise and you don't find any. And then you ask your family, hey, did we finish the mayonnaise? And your spouse walks to the refrigerator, reaches to the jar of mayonnaise right in front of you and hands it to you. And you stand there feeling embarrassed. Maybe you thought the mayo was not there, or you were looking elsewhere, or your mind was on another subject. Or maybe your mind thought the mayonnaise jar had a green label. And so the blue label or the yellow label or the red label just didn't register in your mind. But it was right there in front of you the whole time. A Course in Miracles guides us to redirect our attention from grievances to gratitude. Just like the clipper ships and the gorilla and the mayonnaise, it is always possible to find what you're looking for. It's possible to miss what's right in front of you. It's possible to miss your true nature as love because you're looking elsewhere. This tragic misperception is not just common, it is the human condition. It is said that, quote, many people are good at counting the cost, but few are good at counting the benefits, close quotes. Remember, the title of this lesson is Clouds Cannot Stop You. Alan goes on and writes, lots of people complain about struggling with writer's block or a similar artistic impediment. I prefer to substitute the word distraction for a block. The word block sounds solid and impenetrable, like the imposing monolith that the prehistoric apes encountered in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Such massive forms are dense and formidable. Are our life lessons really that thick? Is the reality built on faulty perception made of cement? Do we need a jackhammer to demolish those obstructions? Or might we simply move past perceived challenges more quickly, gracefully, and easily, simply by shifting to a higher vision rather than remaining fixated on the problem? We do not need to sweat to hack away at illusions. We are stronger than illusions. Workbook Lesson 69 gives us soothing imagery to help us transcend apparent obstacles. He says, Jesus asks us to imagine rising through clouds that obscure our view of the sun. Determine to go past the clouds, he suggests. Brush them aside with your hand. Feel them resting on your cheeks and forehead and eyelids as you go through them. Go on, he says. Clouds cannot stop you. That's from the workbook, Lesson 69. Alan writes, rising through the mist of an unsubstantial cloud is a lot easier than trying to demolish massive blocks. So he reminds us, love is always present, but we are not always paying attention to the love that's present. Energy flows where attention goes. Guy Finley says, as goes my attention, so comes my experience. When we give our attention to illusions, we miss the truth. We dwell in the realm equivalent to our consciousness. Jesus explained this dynamic in the language of his time. He said, quote, in my Father's mansion there are many rooms, close quotes. That's from John 14:2. There are an infinite number of chambers of consciousness in this sprawling universe. Every thought we think is a key that opens the door to a unique room. When we become fearful, we enter the room that contains all things fearful. When we focus on love, we gain access to all that is loving. Awakening is a lot simpler than we've been told. We just need to keep our attention on what our spirit values, not on the ego's bogus prizes. So, usually when I encounter this lesson, I start talking to people about various ways it's been said. And one of the ways that I've distilled to say this, it's right in line with Finley saying, as goes my attention, so comes my experience. I use more words than I say. I'd like to tell you two things about yourself. The first thing is, whether you realize it or not, you have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of your conscious awareness. You may not know that, but you have that infinite capacity to choose the focus of your conscious awareness. The second thing is, it is literally the choice of the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment that creates your life experience in that moment. So the outside events happen, and how you choose to interpret and respond to them creates your experience of them. So Alan Cohen goes on and he says, the world of fear is unsubstantial and requires no resistance. We do not need to spend time and energy fighting sin. What we fight, we magnify in our experience. If we try to crash through our perceived blocks, we will get banged and bruised. The way to defeat the physical world is to rise above it. Jesus said, quote, in the world you shall have tribulation, but take heart, for I have overcome the world, close quotes. That's from John 16:33. And in A Course in Miracles, he reiterates that when we finally win the battle against sin, we will realize that the battle was never required. We could have simply said, quote, I have no use for this, close quotes. That's from the Teacher's Manual, the 5th lesson. And then behaviors that we deem sinful would just fall away due to their lack of interest for us. Alan writes, every year I host a Hawaii retreat for Japanese participants. The Japanese are very obedient people, trained to follow the rules of their culture that their culture has set for them. A lot of my work with them is to help them trust themselves and their inner guidance. During one retreat, a young woman told me, quote, I just got divorced and I'm ready to start dating again. I would like to have 3 boyfriends, but I feel guilty, close quotes. Alan writes, quote, you are allowed to have as many boyfriends as you like. There is no rule about how many boyfriends you can have, close quotes. She was thrilled to hear this and thanked me profusely. Another fellow told me, quote, I had an argument with my father and I don't want to speak to him, close quotes. I told him, that's fine. Maybe it would serve you not to speak with him for a while. He liked that idea and he also thanked me profusely. When I visited Japan the next time, I saw both of these students. The woman told me, I decided all I really want is one boyfriend. So that's what I have and I'm happy with him. And the other fellow told me, after a while I missed speaking to my dad and we made amends. Our relationship is really good now. In both these cases, the clients were simply looking for permission to do what they wanted to do. It was not my permission they needed, but their own. When they flowed with their own intentions, life found a way to help them balance it out. I knew that the woman would not do well with several boyfriends, and the fellow would eventually reconcile with his dad, but they each needed to make their own decision and learn from its results. The ancient Chinese art of Wu Wei teaches the value of effortless action. When we do not fight ourselves, we don't fight other people, we don't fight the universe, we arrive at the highest result. Flowing with your inner guidance rather than bucking through obstacles yields success and inner peace. In the A Course in Miracles passage, Jesus is not calling us to buck through the clouds, but instead to gently rise above them. If you are trying to break a bad habit, self-justice, self-judgment, and resistance keep that habit in force. Guilt compels you to continue to do what you feel guilty about. Course in Miracles expands on this and says, what you resist expands and persists. A Course in Miracles tells us that guilt is never an appropriate view of anyone's behavior, including your own. Forgiveness and progress, let me read that again. Forgiveness will progress you through far more efficiently than guilt. And in this process, whether it's Course in Miracles, they use a definition for forgiveness, which is dismantling perception and dismantling judgment. So living in the question will move you forward faster than judging and blaming and guilt. So instead of fighting your bad habits, focus on other activities that elevate you to a higher vibration. And then the bad habit will fall away and you will graduate from it. 12-step programs are effective because members take hold of a higher power, which lifts them beyond their addiction. The idea of being, quote, a spiritual warrior, close quote, is an oxymoron. Only the ego is at war. Meanwhile, spirit, with a capital S, lovingly looks on, patiently waiting for the person identifying him or herself as a warrior to drop his or her weaponry so they can ascend beyond the misty veils of this appearance of separation. He writes, the Holy Spirit and the ego are like radio stations, each broadcasting a unique frequency. If you are listening to a radio playing loud, annoying music or constantly blaring bad news, you don't need to argue with the radio, smash it with a hammer, or form a support group for people who've been victimized by the negative vibes. You simply need to switch the channel so you attune to a more desirable station, one with soothing music and uplifting words. He writes here, station KGOD is broadcasting 24/7. We just need to set our dial so we can receive it. Even the idea of breakthrough implies there is an obstacle that's formidable enough that we need to break through it. Breaking anything is a form of violence. The Manual for Teachers tells us that one of the attributes of a teacher of God is gentleness. Gentleness does not wrestle. It transcends. If you find yourself wrestling with anyone or anything, here's the invitation. Stop, step back, breathe, and ask, what would gentleness do here? Again, you don't have to kill your ego. To kill anything is an act of violence. Only ego tries to kill ego. Capital S, spirit simply sees through the ego into the reality of love. If you're preoccupied with trying to get rid of your demons, you will only find more demons to vanquish. This reminds me of a story that Pema Chodron told about this guru who went up in a cave to get away from it all and meditate and find enlightenment. And he was doing quite well until one day, after a walk, he returned to his cave and it was full of demons. And he thought himself to be quite enlightened and quite elevated because of his fasting and meditating and prayer. And so he thought he could command the demons. And yet, the more he told them to leave and the more he got angry and stomped his feet, the more they laughed and the more demons arrived. Eventually, worn out, tired, he just sat down and started meditating and being gentle with himself and therefore the demons, actually inviting them to stick around, maybe have a little soup. As he did, they all left, all but one, that is. And he realized the dynamic, and so he said to this one, "You're a really tricky one." And the demon chuckled and got bigger and louder. And the yogi just started to relax all the more. And eventually, even that last demon left. But he knew, the yogi knew, it could return. And if it did return, he would welcome it. He would welcome it as an indication that his internal process was off the mark. So here's Alan Cohen writing, if you are preoccupied with trying to get rid of your demons, you will only find more demons to vanquish. Living in a demon-filled world is the result of immersing yourself in demon consciousness. What you fight, you feed. Quit trying to fix your faults or fill in your emptiness. Jesus said, quote, be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect, close quote. So that's from Matthew 5:48. He didn't say become perfect. You can't become perfect because you've already been created as perfect. After you have exhausted all efforts to fix yourself, you will realize that the real you never needed fixing. The whole idea of self-improvement is also an oxymoron. Your true self, capital S self, cannot be improved upon. You cannot get to wholeness by focusing on brokenness. You cannot get to truth by way of illusion. The one doing the fixing is the same one that needs to be fixed. The fox is in the cage, is in charge of the hen house. Quit identifying yourself as fault-ridden. Identify instead as a being of light. He invites us to disown dysfunction. He says, quirks may leave or they may stay. In either case, they will not matter because you are established in your higher nature. And then he quotes the Course in Miracles textbook 14, where it says, you cannot be your guide to miracles, for it is you who made them necessary. Alan writes, A Course in Miracles helps us dissolve apparent obstacles by showing us that they are insubstantial, and then by making the energy of love so attractive that we would rather pay attention to it instead of fear. Fear ultimately fails because it is not of the creation and therefore not formidable. Only love is real. All else is just a weird dream from which love itself helps us awaken. So, hoping that this is making some sense and resonating with people, feel free to drop a comment in the app or raise a hand by tapping the phone icon to let us know. How is this landing for you? We have maybe 4 or 5 minutes left before I will close out this first essentially hour of Mindshifters Radio and leave the space open for Michael and Jeannie to open up the app and start their second hour. Thank you, Julia, for the comment. I believe Celinda has tried to call, and I tried to tap the phone icon for her. Celinda, if you want to try again, you should be in the air.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, I just want to my appreciation for your Alan Cohen reading and everything else you said today too. But I think I was gifted his first book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy, and so I'll look forward to reading that. And then I appreciate your reading this one, and I will probably get it as well. It's so much more gentle, like the way of mastery and a walk in the physical. Gentle. He did mention that today, didn't he?
Yes, indeed. And it's one of the qualities that draws me to his, whether they're daily meditations or his talks or his books, is that he has a gentle approach to himself and life.
I think that's the most nurturing thing I could bathe myself in. I think I mentioned to you once that I picked a free book up off the shelf called One Word, and it was written by 4 Christian gentlemen, and just kind of stumbled, one of them kind of stumbled on this. He was led to just choose one word for the whole world, for the whole year, and nothing else, just one word. And, going through the meditative process to find it and asking to be shown all of that. And so this year, when I just started listening to you, I think 2021 or something like that, 22, January of 22, I chose abide. And the second year I chose gentle. And then Michael suggested listen last year, and that resonated deeply, so I chose listen. I've been practicing all of those. And this year I chose the word still, S-T-I-L-L. And I just thought I'd share that because it's been very powerful. It's amazing how often those words will jump out at me and remind me. And still, I struggle between silence and still, but there are many more years to come, so I'm sure I'll get to silence to still one out. I just thought I'd share that. And when you mentioned gentle by reading it today, I thought, oh yes, that was year 2. Still ongoing.
Well, I will say thank you for your call. Let's see if there is, okay. Apparently, the transcript was not hearing me. So I was just saying that what Celinda is pulling our attention to is exactly what Alan Cohen was talking about when he talked about the video of the people passing the ball, some with red shirts, some with white shirts, and then the gorilla coming into the circle and then pounding its chest and leaving. That's a story about our ability to screen out or hyper-focus on certain things. And there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system which chooses that. And so when you have a book like that that says one word and you choose one word to focus on throughout the year, you will start to notice it more because you've told your mind, pay attention to this word or the concepts that I associate with this word. And I'm glad you found that as a useful tool, and thanks for sharing that with us, Celinda. Please remember that you'll have to reload the app after we end this first hour. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.